When you hear all the stuff, Baker, first thought.
That you really don't know me.
People need to be held accountable. You goof. You lead the NFL in interceptions. You're somebody that needs to be held accountable.
Baker's played 6 games this year. In 0 of those games has he thrown multiple touchdown passes. But in 3 of those games, he's had 3 turnovers. And since he's taken over the team, he has 25 interceptions in 19 starts. That's disastrous.
If I have Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, and this Baker Mayfield, yeah, I know he's overrated as hell.
You believe Baker Mayfield is overrated?
Absolutely.
What are you seeing that he's not doing right now? What's he doing wrong?
What's he doing right?
Former Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield, the #1 overall pick in the 2018 draft, is packing his bags and he is headed to the Carolina Panthers.
Where do you think Baker goes from here?
Probably, all things being equal, the Rams probably were a team that could use him.
To be able to come in here 10 minutes ago and help lead us to a victory. See you guys on Monday. Baker Mayfield.
In a strange way, last night was perfect for Baker Mayfield. It felt ad-libbed, plays in the dirt. I felt it was Baker Mayfield's greatest moment as a pro. I thought last night got him one more shot to be a starting quarterback in this league. I'd like to be Baker Mayfield's agent, and I'm going to tell him at 28 years old, retire, save your brand, and go to college football and be an analyst. Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. It's a battle to see who will start at quarterback. It's time to retire.
What a day for Baker Mayfield and the Bucs.
Yeah, he put in a Brett Favre performance today. Came out here to Lambeau, slung that ball all over the park, was aggressive down the middle of the field, and he's the reason they won.
This year for Baker is better than people are giving him credit for. Nobody's really paying attention.
Right now, Baker Mayfield is the MVP.
Baker Mayfield's story is one that inspires even beyond the world of sports. He's been celebrated on the brightest of stages, praised for his greatness, but then doubted, criticized, and cast aside more times than you can count. Now, he represents the best of the best when it comes to comeback quarterbacks in the NFL today. And I beg the question if he is one of the best quarterbacks in today's game. Every step of Baker Mayfield's journey is jam-packed. So to get a full understanding of his story, why it's so great, and why he's so great, we're going to go all the way back to 1995. Baker Reagan Mayfield was born on April 14th, 1995, in Austin, Texas, to James and Gina Mayfield as the younger of 2 sons. Mayfield grew up a fan of the University of Oklahoma, and he attended many of their games growing up during his childhood. Mayfield would go on to become the starting quarterback for the Lake Travis High School Cavaliers in Austin, Texas. He would lead Lake Travis to a 25-2 record in 2 seasons, and he won the 2011 4A state championship. He finished his high school football career totaling 6,255 passing yards, 67 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions. He was offered scholarships by Washington State, Rice, New Mexico, and Florida Atlantic. Mayfield said, "I easily could have gone to a place like Florida Atlantic, but my dad pushed me to realize that my dream was to play somewhere big. This is what Baker wanted, but no one was calling. So he took a leap of faith and decided to walk on to Texas Tech." Before the start of the 2013 season, Mayfield was named the starting quarterback following a back injury to the projected starter, Michael Brewer, and Mayfield would become the first true walk-on freshman quarterback to start an FBS season opener. Baker had a spectacular start to his career. In the first game against SMU, Mayfield passed for 413 yards and 4 touchdowns. His 43 completions of 60 attempts broke a school record and fell only 4 completions short of the NCAA D1 FBS single game record for completions by a freshman. Mayfield was one of 10 semifinalists for the Burleson's Trophy, the award given to the best player in D1 football who began his college career as a walk-on. Mayfield earned the Big 12 Conference Freshman Offensive Player of the Year for the 2013 season. Mayfield announced that he would be leaving the program, though, due to a miscommunication with the coaching staff. There were scholarship issues that Baker claimed led to the decision, and head coach Cliff Kingsbury denied such claims, and this will come up again. In February of 2014, head coach Bob Stoops confirmed that Mayfield would be walking on for the Oklahoma Sooners. Mayfield was not eligible to play yet, though, until the 2015 season, and so he lost a year of eligibility due to the Big 12 Conference transfer rules. So, Baker would have to wait. Over a year later, on August 24th, 2015, Mayfield was named the starting quarterback for the Sooners after winning the competition against Trevor Knight. And Mayfield was sensational, boasting blowout wins and 3-score comebacks on his way to a seat at the Heisman table, finishing 4th in voting that year. The Sooners would make it to the semifinals in the Orange Bowl versus Clemson, but would fall by a score of 37-17. Leaving Baker and the Sooners with a bad taste in their mouth and a hunger for vengeance. The following season, in 2016, the Sooners' offense was just as lethal. In October, Mayfield would face off against Texas Tech, against Patrick Mahomes, in what would be a historic shootout. In a 66-59 victory, Mayfield had 545 passing yards and 7 touchdowns. Mayfield would again be a finalist for the 2016 Heisman Trophy, and he would finish in 3rd place this time in voting. It was also announced that they would play in the Sugar Bowl against Auburn, where Mayfield would go on to earn MVP, leading the Sooners to a 35-19 victory. And that would have been the end of his college career, but the Baker Mayfield rule was instilled in this offseason. On June 2nd, the Big 12 approved and amended the proposal with a vote of 7-3. The rule change that made Mayfield eligible to play for Oklahoma through the 2017 season. However, after a big win for Baker, things would take an ugly turn. In February 25th, 2017, the news would break and a video would surface. In Fayetteville, Arkansas, Baker was seen resisting arrest while publicly intoxicated. Along with his other antics, the media would rip into him, comparing him to Johnny Manziel and label him a toxic personality, damaging his reputation forever. Heading into his final season, offensive coordinator Lincoln Riley was hired as the head coach after Bob Stoops hung it up after his 18-year career. On September 9th, 2017, after a big win against the Ohio State Buckeyes in Columbus, Mayfield planted the Sooners flag in the middle of the painted O at the Ohio Stadium, causing a major public backlash. And this wouldn't be the first time this season that Baker would receive criticism for his behavior. After Kansas players refused to shake hands in the pregame, and following a cheap shot by a Kansas defender, Mayfield was seen grabbing his crotch and mouthing "F*** you" at the Kansas coach on the sideline. Lincoln Riley announced that Mayfield would not start or be a captain during the upcoming game due to his actions. But this wasn't changing anyone's mind on who he was. No punishment was great enough to mend what he had done. On December 2nd of 2017, Mayfield would lead Oklahoma to its 3rd straight Big 12 championship, beating the TCU Horned Frogs 41-17. Mayfield won MVP honors while Oklahoma clinched a 2nd playoff berth in 3 years. The Sooners would go on to lose, however, in the semifinal Rose Bowl to the Georgia Bulldogs in another shootout, 54-48, despite his heroic effort. On December 9th of 2017, Baker Mayfield would finally go on to win the Heisman Trophy with a sweeping majority. He received 86% of the possible points, which is the 3rd highest percentage in Heisman voting history. Mayfield also became the first and only walk-on player to ever win the Heisman Trophy, capping off a college career that millions of young football players across the country dream of every night. Truly doing it in his way, bootstrapping all the way to a starting role, then the leader of a team he adored from the stands as a child, and winning the Heisman in his final season. However, Baker's story of earning every opportunity he'd ever been given was not enough for many when it came to evaluating him in the pre-draft process. He was perceived as the #1 overall pick, but many criticized his behavior, begging the question if someone so immature could be trusted with the responsibility of being the face of an NFL franchise. Other quarterbacks like Sam Darnold boasted much more talent compared to Baker Mayfield, and the questions were stirring all offseason. The Browns held the 1st and 4th overall pick, and despite all the noise, they would go on to select Baker 1st overall as the new savior of the Cleveland Browns, a team notorious for ruining any quarterback who dared run their offense. And thus, Baker Mayfield's NFL journey began. The year prior, the Cleveland Browns were 0-16, but now, with Baker Mayfield, a franchise drowning in misery finally had a spark. The team didn't have any real strengths, but after the past 2 drafts, the team was able to build a decent offense and a slightly above average defense. The team started the first 3 games with Tyrod Taylor, but in week 3 on Thursday Night Football against the Jets, Tyrod would suffer a concussion, and in comes Baker. The Browns hadn't won a game in 635 days. Mayfield comes off the bench and leads them to victory over the Jets, and Cleveland explodes in joy. Beer coolers across the city were unlocked, and Baker Mayfield's hero story had begun. He would continue the remaining 13 games as a starter and was every bit as advertised: precise, scrappy, and a confident leader. He broke Peyton Manning's rookie record for touchdown passes with 27, only starting 13 games. And the Browns would finish an impressive and surprising 7-8-1. And Baker would be 7-7 in the games that he played. It seemed after 2 decades of misery, the Browns had finally gotten their guy. In this offseason, the Browns traded for wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., garnering enormous amounts of hype for the already exciting Cleveland Browns, and the NFL was ready for the show in Cleveland. In his first full season as a starter, in year 2, Baker and the Browns would regress, however. Throwing 21 interceptions, Baker was beginning to lose faith amongst the public as the team finished with a 6-10 record. Odell Beckham's dad was also causing a stir in the media, claiming Baker was doing a bad job getting Odell the ball and bringing a cloud of drama and distraction over the seemingly grounded Browns team from the year before. The rookie media darling narrative was all gone, and now, as the Browns QB, people were beginning to think it was just the same story all over again. Time was quickly running out, and the former walk-on was again faced with criticism and doubt. In 2020, he would respond to that criticism, leading the Browns to an 11-5 record, and then the playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a division rival. As underdogs with nothing to lose, the Browns and Baker Mayfield played the game of their life, forcing 5 turnovers on defense, and Baker led the offense to a 48-37 victory over the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger in the Browns' first postseason victory since 1994. They would go on to verse the Chiefs and go down 19-3 at half, but a Patrick Mahomes injury would allow the Browns to crawl back to a 17-23 score. However, the Browns would punt the ball back late in the game in the 4th, and the Chiefs would shut the door. How disappointing. But Cleveland believed. The city embraced him once again. The commercials were airing. The confidence he had. And for the first time in a decade, the Browns had a guy that they genuinely believed in. Nobody knew it yet, but Baker's story in Cleveland had already peaked. In 2021, Baker would play through a torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. His numbers tanked, just 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and barely completing 60% of his passes. in and out of the lineup, re-aggravating the shoulder, and additionally suffering a knee contusion, playing through it all. But Baker could not hold it down. The swagger started to look like recklessness, and Cleveland's patience ran out. In 2022, the Browns, feeling confident in their roster, their defense, and the weapons they had, would trade for Deshaun Watson and offer him a fully guaranteed $230 million contract. A guy who is facing scrutiny for an abundance of cases accusing him of criminal abuse of female massage therapists. Baker was discarded, traded to the Panthers. Life comes at you fast. Just 1 year before, Cleveland was boasting about their quarterback. 1 year later, they had already moved on. Now in Carolina, on an even worse team, Baker struggled. He was becoming a joke at this point. The once proud walk-on to Heisman winner had been reduced to lining up at scout team defensive tackle as he was eventually benched. Mocked all over social media and on sports talk shows. By mid-season, he would eventually be released, and everyone just assumed that that was it. Baker was just another Johnny Manziel, who is too immature to unlock his potential and reach his future goals. He would go on to get picked up by the Rams in what seemed like an afterthought, after they were coming off a Super Bowl year and suffering a hangover and a banged-up Matthew Stafford. But in Week 13, the Rams' third-string quarterback, John Wolford, would go down in a game versus the Raiders. And Baker, who signed only 2 days before, had to step in at QB, down 10-0. The Rams' season, like I said, was lost by injuries just 1 year out from that Super Bowl, and the team was 3-9, so they were not a great team. Baker wasn't playing for playoffs or anything, not even just to win, but he himself was playing for his career. Every pass he threw could change his future, open a door, or close it forever. Down 16-3 with 3:55 left, the Rams get their first touchdown of the game, drawing the score into 16-10. The Rams kept it close, but backed up to their own 2-yard line with only 1:45 remaining. It seemed all was lost. Baker took the field with his future in his hands. And what was a boring Thursday night game suddenly started drawing eyes across the league, as Baker would start working his way down the field. With 20 seconds left, after a completed pass, Baker spikes the ball at the Raiders' 24-yard line, and the incompletion left only 15 seconds on the clock. Time was running out. Baker would take the snap, and in a quick drop, he would wind up and release the ball deep left. His destiny hangs in the balance as the ball glides through the air. The stadium held its breath. And it's caught! Van Jefferson in the end zone. Baker has completed the 2-score fourth quarter comeback, the 98-yard game-winning drive, and after all, meeting his team coaches just 48 hours beforehand. Suddenly, the people watched with curiosity as Baker finished out the year as the Rams starter, pulling off some impressive wins and performances. He wasn't perfect, but it was enough to get people believing in him again. And something seemed different about Baker in that game. And there was. But you don't have to hear me say it. Take it from him.
There was a lot of emptiness that I had been searching for, and through ups and downs that thought I could fulfill it in other ways and did not. And my identity at the time was a football player. It was a quarterback. I thought I could carry that. I was like, oh, I've done this. I walked on. I did this. I did that. Fast forward a couple years into my NFL career, God taught me a lesson. He had to take my career down to the studs and make me realize that I'm more than a football player. There's much more going on in the game of football. And for me to see that, I had to hit rock bottom. And it wasn't just football, it was in our marriage. We weren't doing well at all. At this time, we were trying to have kids. wasn't going well. And so that was when we dove into PAO. But I remember a couple of years ago we talked about there's that 99% of you that you can put on a facade as a guy, you put on the mask, but behind closed doors, who are you really? What are you hiding? Are you being vulnerable? And until my career got stripped down, I was hiding a lot. And then for me to climb back up, I had to dive into the Word and accept the grace. And that was something that was really, really hard for me. And when I eventually did, I started to see things from a different viewpoint. And that was the biggest change in my life. And that's a couple of years ago. And I think the best part that I've learned throughout the process is it's constant work. It's not like you just get baptized and you're saved. You have to continue to work because the enemy is out to get you. And that's what I thought that, okay, once I achieve something, I can just move on. No, this is something that has to be part of the daily routine, and you have to make your priorities align with that.
I encourage you all to watch the full clip, but I love how this shines a light on the fact that development in the NFL does not just depend on your understandings of X's and O's or your surrounding cast and coaches, but also where you are at in life. Seems obvious, but thinking back, I'm curious, how many careers ended under the pretense that the guy just sucked rather than something was holding him back on his team, the coaches, or something off the field that we didn't know about? Religion aside, Baker experienced an ego death. Everything that he believed made him who he was stripped away, and there was nothing left but Baker himself. And he could have given up right there and accepted what happened to him. But he took a new approach, and that, as we all will find out, led to even more success than he imagined. In 2023, Tom Brady retired after giving it another shot at the Super Bowl, and Tampa Bay needed a quarterback. And nobody expected much when they signed Baker Mayfield, just another bridge guy that may not even beat out rookie Kyle Trask in the quarterback battle. But what happened next shocked the NFL. In week 1, Mayfield outdueled Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. Mid-season, he carved up the Packers with 381 yards and 4 touchdowns. And he finished the season with 28 touchdown passes, the most of his whole career, and with Tampa winning the NFC South. Then, in the playoffs, against a crippled Eagles team, fresh off a Super Bowl appearance though, Mayfield would throw for 337 yards and 3 touchdowns, dismantling the Eagles. They would go on to lose a close one to the Lions in the divisional round, 31-23, where Baker did play a great game. And one might say, Baker is back. But I'd say Baker finally arrived. The best version of Baker. In 2024, many expected regression, myself included. Their offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, was hired as the Panthers head coach, and the lightning in the bottle that won them the weak NFC South, most thought it wouldn't last long. But I and everyone else were mistaken again, as Baker had the best season of his entire career, and one of the best in 2024, throwing for 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns, boasting a 106.8 passer rating, the 4th highest in the league that year. They would be back in the playoffs with a 10-7 record, but this time the Bucs would fumble it away versus the Commanders in the wild card, who would go on to the NFC Championship game. It was a disappointing loss as the Bucs were in that game and had a great chance to win, but it was clear that the Bucs were no joke and should be one of the best NFC teams in the NFL moving forward. And now in 2025, the Bucs have met expectations so far, and so has Baker. Before falling 31-26 to the Eagles, the Buccaneers were 3-0, and Baker led 3 fourth-quarter comebacks and 3 game-winning drives so far. Looks like Baker is in his prime.
It's been a journey, but it all happened for a reason, and God's timing was perfect, where Tampa feels like home for me now, but that's because of what I built the foundation on, and what my wife and I, Emily, built our foundation on, and that's our faith, and it's been such a special ride to let God take us through that.
It's crazy to think how many times his career could have ended. Walking on twice, being a Browns quarterback, and getting traded away from the Browns to the Panthers, two teams that needed quarterbacks, and getting released by the Panthers too, and just getting clowned on by the whole league. That Rams drive, things could have went wrong there, and even in Tampa, things could have gone wrong for him. But to me, this is one of the most underappreciated stories in the NFL. It is getting more attention now, but the journey is just beautiful with all its ups and downs and the genuine character development that is often wishful thinking with most NFL players. It's got it all, and one day, someone needs to make a movie about this man. So that is Baker Mayfield's journey so far, and here are Baker's career stats. We see his up and down start in Cleveland, then he's traded to the pitiful Panthers, where he would struggle and be released, but go on to show some signs of life on that Rams team as we've discussed. Then, in his new era on the Bucs, a new offensive coordinator every year, and he's still improved every season. From 2023 till now, here's how Mayfield stacks up against the rest of the league. He's tied for first in passing touchdowns at 81 with Jared Goff, with the next closest being Lamar Jackson at 75 touchdown passes, and then in third place, Josh Allen with 68. Baker is second in passing yards at 10,083 yards, a little over 500 behind Jared Goff, who's in first place, and almost 500 yards ahead of Patrick Mahomes, who's in third. Baker is sixth in QBR behind Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, and Joe Burrow. And Baker saving his best for the playoffs, as in his 5 playoff games, he is number 1 in playoff QBR amongst active quarterbacks, better than Mahomes, Stafford, Josh Allen, and the prime years of Aaron Rodgers that are included in there. He is number 1 in touchdown percentage and 4th in depth of target, which proves how much of a reliable vet he's been. In fact, you could argue statistically, right now, he's the best. And if it wasn't for that fumble versus the Commanders, I think they win that game. I think they go on to beat the Lions. And then I think they were the best matchup against that Eagles team last year. As we've seen before, they were the last real loss that Eagles team had in 2024. So since joining the Bucs, Baker's been nothing short of a top 5 quarterback. But I want to come back to Baker's resurrection. He isn't the only quarterback to revive his career. Geno Smith, after a decade as a backup, unexpectedly resurged with Seattle when many thought it was Drew Lock's time to shine. He made the Pro Bowl in his first year starting. Baker's probably had a better team, but Geno's regressed every year since Dave Canales left Seattle, and Baker's stats and playoff performances are also much better. Sam Darnold, another victim of the New York Jets quarterback scapegoat funnel, written off by everyone, including me, then making the absolute most out of an opportunity in 2024 with the Vikings when rookie J.J. McCarthy tore his meniscus and was out for the year, having an incredible season, nearly earning the 1 seed, throwing for 35 touchdowns. And we saw earlier how his QBR is also top 5 since 2023, even though this has been more of a 2-year thing for him. And it's funny how Carolina had both of these guys. I didn't think it would continue for Sam Darnold in a worse offense in Seattle, but he's proven that he's genuinely taken strides and his talent is finally shining through. But yet again, I would say Baker went through the same thing. He's been back for longer, proved it longer, and played far better in the playoffs compared to Sam Darnold's blunder last year in his first playoff game. And lastly, Daniel Jones, someone I know very well and defended when he was on the Giants, citing the lack of any offensive help. Even after his first year with Deadpool, Jones was the most hated quarterback in the NFL. Most thought his career was over, but after joining the Colts and winning the job over Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones has produced like a top quarterback in the NFL this year. And the Colts are now a top 10 team, also sharing the best record in the league at 5-1, and it looks like they finally found their future quarterback. With Daniel Jones, it's more so of a too soon to tell thing for me, but I think Baker's resume means Daniel Jones has a lot of catching up to do in terms of being a comeback quarterback. None of them match up to Baker's resurgence, in my opinion. Geno has regressed, Darnold still has to prove it in the playoffs, and Daniel Jones is a few years behind Baker in terms of proving himself to the league. I'd also say Baker is far and away the best leader of this bunch, and it really galvanizes this Bucs team to be their best. As we saw with that scramble against the 49ers, we can see just how much he fires up this team. Of all the comeback quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield isn't just back. He's the best comeback story in the NFL right now. In today's NFL, there's a small elite tier of quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and I would put Matthew Stafford and Jaden Daniels at 5 and 6, but just below that, a crowded field of great but not elite quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, productive, one of the best passers in the league, who does it on a Cowboys roster that has problems every year, especially on the defensive side, but many do not excuse the playoff struggles that Dak has shown. Jalen Hurts, a dual threat, a Super Bowl champion and MVP, but certainly a streaky passer and aided by far and away the best team in the NFL. Justin Herbert, a stat machine and all the talent in the world, but genuinely seems to crumble in the biggest of moments. And then there's Baker Mayfield, and he belongs here. Right now, you can argue that he leads this tier. He has the playoff record over Dak. Dak is probably the better passer and has a worse roster, but Baker's won a playoff game with the Browns, which makes this whole conversation very interesting between these two. I think Baker is a very similar talent to Jalen, maybe a little slower, but a much better passer. He's gone through similar struggles with the changing offensive coordinators, and that has never mattered to him. They're both great leaders, and Baker has worked with a little bit less in Tampa Bay and proven that he can win without all the star players. The Bucs are a great team, but if that's not enough for you, he also won a playoff game on the Browns. And Herbert, who is the superior talent, and they both have great stats. But Baker is everything that Herbert isn't. The clutch nature and grit of Mayfield is what Herbert has been missing in the biggest moments of his career, and it makes it hard to decide who you'd rather have. There's a bunch of ways that you could order these for, but I think it's clear that Baker belongs in this tier and that there's a strong argument that he's the best amongst them. The top 10 QBs in the NFL, after years of only a clear top 4, is solidified with the reemergence of Baker Mayfield filling out this top 10. None of the other top 10 quarterbacks have gone through what Baker has gone through. Stafford was on the Lions, but they never gave up on him. And every other quarterback on that list has only ever played for the same team that they were drafted to. Think back to how Baker was not highly recruited, how he was a 2-time walk-on, being the only walk-on ever to start as a freshman and the only walk-on ever to win the Heisman. The media never letting him forget the mistakes he had made in the past. All the noise that built up in Cleveland over the OBJ situation, Baker thrown away in Cleveland, cast aside in Carolina, and by some random turn of events, given an opportunity on the Rams to restore faith and belief in the minds of others and within himself. His story is not just one of a quarterback who revived his career, but of a man who lost everything he believed made him special, who at a crossroads in life decided to make a choice, a commitment to focus on what he could control, his practice, his family, his wife, and his faith in God. And for that, Baker was rewarded for his commitment to change and to be better. In a league filled with comebacks, Baker Mayfield's story stands above the rest. Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, they've all had their moments, but Baker's revival is different. He's not just back. He's a better quarterback and man than he ever was before. A wiser leader, a stronger fighter, and a top 10 quarterback in today's NFL. The fire that carried the fierce young walk-on is still there, but in this version of Baker, it's complemented by a humble and mature resilience that's kept afloat not by cocky confidence, but with his faith in God. This is Baker Mayfield's resurrection, but the story's not over yet. He's turning heads, playing like an MVP, but the ultimate goal is yet to be achieved. All he needs to solidify himself as the greatest comeback QB of all time is that Super Bowl trophy.
Can't believe it's over. Been a wild ride.
Baker Mayfield, the 83rd Heisman Trophy winner.
You want to be the first pick in the draft?
Yeah, I do.